and welcome now that we know that we're recording, welcome everyone. I'm happy to be with you on this Tuesday evening, and we're going to be doing our pumpkin spice project. And so we will go ahead and get started on this project. I am working on a canvas that is black. You could have ordered a black canvas, or you could have just taken a white canvas and painted it black. And you can see that I have my pattern already transferred on my canvas so that I'm ready to go. And we are going to be using FolkArt Treasure Gold tonight. And we're going to be using the color Fire Opal and Copper and Gold tonight. And those are the three colors that we're going to really use to paint our pumpkin. So I'm going to start just by putting out each of these golds on my palette. And these are rich, beautiful metallic colors. And they are not only metallic, they are almost reflective in their makeup. They are incredibly beautiful metallic colors, and I cannot tell you how to make these colors. They are manufactured here at Plaid in Atlanta, Georgia, and I don't know how they make them, but I do know that they are beautiful. So we are using, again, the Fire Opal, the Copper, and Gold. And I can tell you that we are going to paint our pumpkin tonight without using a paintbrush. We will use a brush to paint our stem, but for the most part, our pumpkin is going to be done with our flexible blade metal palette knife. Now, one thing no, I'm not going to start out doing that. I'm going to start out just with our Fire Opal, and we're going to paint 3 sections of our pumpkin with this Fire Opal. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of paint on the back of my palette knife and pat this color out on my palette so that I don't have very much paint on the back side of my palette knife at all. Now, that's the hardest part of this whole process, is making sure that you don't have too much paint on your palette knife. If you have too much paint on your palette knife, you will put a big blob of paint down on your pumpkin, and neither one of us will be happy. But I'm going to simply start by putting my palette knife down and going along the outside edge of my pumpkin. And you can see that I have a little bit stronger color at the top, and it fades as it comes down, and I have almost no paint left on my palette knife. So I can come back into this little area and pick up a little bit more paint, and I can just touch this palette knife down and go right around the edge of the pumpkin. And I'm not trying to get an even coverage overall. I pulled some in toward the next section, but I'm going to leave the black of the canvas showing. And again, I'm going to put the palette knife down and just kind of push this where I need my paint to go. And as you start to get the hang of this, you will enjoy making your pumpkin take shape. And I just make sure that I turn my canvas so that it's easy to apply the color where I want it to go. All right, so that section I am perfectly happy with. So we're going to leave that section of this pumpkin alone. Now I'm just going to wipe the excess paint off of my palette knife. And we are going to load it up the same way with the same fire opal color. Take the excess paint off on the palette. And I'm going to paint this little section that is up near the pumpkin stem. And I'm going to just set that palette knife down and just kind of push that color in where it needs to go. And that's all I'm going to do up there, leaving it pretty simple. Now, we're going to do the next section of our pumpkin the same way. Pick up the fire opal on our palette knife, and we're going to set the palette knife down and just let it go right along the outside edge of our pumpkin section. And again, having the right amount of paint on the palette knife is key to a successful application of color. And I just pull that in toward the next section, leaving the black as my built-in shading. Okay, and I'm happy with that next section. So we are really cooking with gas tonight. So I'm going to give you all just a moment to catch up with me, because I know some of you are not as familiar with the palette knife as others might be. So we'll give everybody just a chance to kind of catch up. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a mixture of copper and fire opal. So I'm just going to take some copper and move it aside and take, I don't know, about an equal amount of my fire opal. And I'm just going to mix these together, kind of creating a color that's in between the fire opal and the copper. And these metallic colors are so, so pretty. And I think out of all of the pumpkin designs that I've done over the years and taught, it seems like 101 pumpkins. This one is one of my favorites, just because it's a little bit different, um, got a little different look and feel to it, and I kind of really like that. So now I'm going to take this new color, which is lighter than these two sections, and we are going to start in on the main big section of our pumpkin. And I'm going to start and just put the palette knife down along the edge of this pumpkin section and just kind of pull that color out into the center of this pumpkin section. And I'm going to work over here on the right side of this pumpkin section. And one thing that this palette knife does is it gives you marks on your painting that you can't get with a paintbrush. These little marks and kind of dribbles of color you just can't get any other way. Okay, I think that's probably good enough for that center section of the pumpkin. So I'll give you just a minute to bring your pumpkin up to this point. And every time that you would paint a pumpkin using this technique, you're going to get a very different look. I mean, the one that I'm doing now looks different than the one that I did for the sample. And that's just how it goes. All right, now we're going to take our copper color and we are going to load our palette knife with the copper color and pat the excess off on our palette so that we don't have too much on our palette knife. And we're going to paint these next 3 sections. I think I'm going to start up here at this little bitty section at the top. And that one's done. And now I'm going to take that same copper color and start on this outside section. And then pushing a little bit of this color in toward the section dividing line. Okay, so that looks good to me. And we've got one more section to do. Okay, so that's basically our pumpkin blocked in. And what we're going to do next is we're going to take a little bit of a break from our palette knife. And I'm going to put out some asphaltum on my palette. And I'm going to take a number 12 flat brush. And I'm going to paint in my pumpkin stem with the asphaltum. And it's not really going to show up that well because asphaltum is a transparent color and we're painting over black. So we'll just give it a quick fill in. And I'm really going to fill in more on the left side of the stem and just let it kind of fade off as it goes toward the top of the pumpkin and to the right hand side. So I don't know if you can see that, but I've got that pumpkin stem kind of painted in, and I'm going to wipe my brush and I'm going to pick up some Treasure Gold, the gold color, and I'm going to begin to just kind of tap and pat some gold on to the pumpkin stem, and it's going to soften into that asphaltum that's kind of still wet. And you can see that we've got some nice gold highlights on that stem. And I'm going to wipe my brush off. And pick up some more gold. And I'm just going to come back up along the top of the pumpkin stem and more down the left-hand side. And just tap a little bit of an extra gold highlight on. So you can see we've got that gold highlight on the pumpkin stem. And I'm going to shift to a smaller brush because I think it'll be easier to do. And what I'm going to do is this little tendril that kind of comes off the pumpkin stem, and I'm going to do it by just tapping using the corner of my little number 8 flat brush. And you can see that I've put that little tendril on there just by tapping with the corner of my um, number 8 flat brush. And I can come back with just a little bit stronger gold highlight, a little at the top of the pumpkin stem, and just tap down a little bit. Just to make some of that gold a little bit brighter on the pumpkin stem. But I've left the dark at the top of the pumpkin where the stem would attach. Okay, so moving on along, we come now to the highlighting part of our pumpkin painting tonight. And I'm going to highlight these 3 sections of the pumpkin, the far left, the next one, and then the center one. And I'm going to highlight on the upper left quadrant of each of these sections using my gold. And so just patting that excess gold off, because I'd rather need to put more gold on than to have too much gold and have it not look as attractive as I would want it to be. So we're going to start right along this outside edge and just kind of accent that with the gold. And hopefully you can see that there is a highlight of gold on that section. And then we're going to do the same thing on the next section. Okay, and that one's nicely highlighted. And then on this main central section of the pumpkin, we're going to do the same thing mostly on this left side, starting up at the top. All right, so that is our pumpkin. Pretty simple design, did not take a lot of time or effort, which I think this spooky season, this is kind of what you all need, is something's asking the size of my palette knife. This is a number 6 RGM palette knife that you can get online at michaels.com. But I think, it's spooky season. You need something that's going to be quick and effective. And I think this little pumpkin really does fit that bill. So again, we used the FolkArt Treasure Gold in the Fire Opal, the Copper, and the Gold. So those 3 colors and some Asphaltum were all we needed to do this. So before we get out of here, I want to invite you to paint with Chris Williams. She'll be doing this Gather class on the 22nd of October. And you can go to michaels.com, search for online classes, and scroll till you see the Gather and click the Book Now button for that. So it's been my pleasure painting this pumpkin spice design with you tonight. And hopefully you've had fun painting it along with me. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you later on.